Travis Wayne Goodsell. Again, there's another fake study by BYU that's come out to help support the church's position. What a surprise. That is a false position that is actually causing harm rather than helping anybody. And so, again, let me go over some basic precepts that are factually based. Idol worship is the belief that an object, any object, has the capacity for possessing moral, spiritual, ethical powers, whether they're for good or evil, right or wrong. And that humans, when associating with these idols, can be possessed by their morality, ethical standards and values, spiritual powers, whether for good or evil, right or wrong. And that when we act on those beliefs that an idol has such powers and that we've been possessed by such powers from an idol, those actions are what constitutes superstition. It's very basic precepts that are factual. And so let's remind ourselves of her name. Church communicates psychologist. Natasha Helfer. She was excommunicated as a sex therapist. Not a medical doctor, a psychologist. And I disapprove of the pseudoscience of psychology. It's a danger and a threat to our society because they do not use science. Just as you don't want to go to your medical doctor and have them psychoanalyze you. You've got some physical problems that you need their help with. You don't want medical malpractice with psychology. And besides, medical doctors have a Hippocratic oath. And if they're using psychology, they're in violation of their Hippocratic oath to do no harm. Psychologists don't have that Hippocratic oath and can do harm and are doing harm to both in the educational field as they brainwash new recruits to attack our society at large. And the church fully embraces this. They don't have a group or organization of scientists. They did away with their LDS hospital. Nope. They fully embrace psychology, the pseudoscience, fake science. But Natasha Helfer got out of line. She did not conform and comply to the church. And she even went against psychologists, because psychologists at a pseudoscience has, for a long time, way back in the 80s, if not 70s, have declared that pornography and masturbation are a mental illness. They're addictions. And we need to pay them money for them to psychoanalyze us and never solve our problem. It's a danger when your business is based on human beings to make you money, not to buy goods and services from you. But that people become chattel. That's why it's important that a Hippocratic oath be given to psychologists, and that those in government office swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution, so that they do not abuse humans with human rights violations. But psychologists are exempt, just like the church is exempt. And so, yeah, she was saying that the medical professionals have found that masturbation is healthy, and that pornography does not constitute an addiction. Again, that's a pseudoscience thing, so that they can get clients, where they bully you into accepting that you have a problem, and you pay them money, just like a bully at school who shakes you down for your lunch money, calling you all sorts of names and threatening your life. That's what the church is involved with their psychologists. And here they are with BYU. BYU is a fake educational system, just like Fox News is a fake news system, as exposed by the Dominion voting lawsuit. They lie. This study is a lie. And so the church, as we witnessed with Natasha Helfer, purposely controls the narrative for psychologists and for sexual relationships. And so BYU is fully conforming and compliant after having... They're thinking that this scandal has gone away, and I'm not going to let it. And so, again, what they're doing is saying that Natasha Helfer was wrong. The church is right, church is true, we follow Jesus, and you must obey, or the penalty of death. So, pornography use at any level harms romantic relationships, sex, sexual relationships. Just say sex. It's love. Okay, so what is pornography? Well, evangelicals at the end of the 19th century were the first ones to create this word out of nothing. It's actually two Greek words, and I've gone over it, but graphy is any artistic medium. It's a graph. It's an artistic medium. Whether it be carved in stone, paintings, drawings, magazines, VHS tapes, DVDs, even audiobooks, books, and the internet and streaming services, and whatever else may come up as an artistic medium for the future. They're all forms of art, and as such, you can't judge them, because it's all based on opinion. What you do judge is precepts. When a song has lyrics, they're teaching precepts, and they're either right or wrong. And once you identify that it's right or wrong, it has no power over you. It's when you refuse to allow precepts to be tested, you just accept whatever is told to you, and you believe it, regardless of what it says. It's just for entertainment. Those precepts now are ingrained in your life, and you then practice them. And this is what they're not getting over. They're not explaining to you. And likewise with images of women. But porn is from the word prostitute in Greek, and that's two Greek words put together. It's before the statue, because at the Greek temples they had sacral prostitutes, women who would be religious women who, when people wanted to worship at the temple to reenact creation, would go there to have sex with the women. In the Roman period time, that's when men became sacral prostitutes. So when you see in scriptures that men are asking for sex, that's referring to the Roman period time, where it was just women. Greek period time. So Sodom and Gomorrah, written during the Greek period or Roman period time. Ta-da! And so it's not evil. That was their religion. And it is a de-evolution from the original Egyptian. But nonetheless, we cannot impose our morality on other cultures in the past. We can't change them. They've already happened. We can just see how it practiced in the culture. And since we're not in that culture, we have to live with now. And pornography was in the Supreme Court, and they rendered a ruling which you're supposed to ask yourself 3 questions to test if material is obscene. And YouTube and the church wants to embrace number 1, community standards and values. And so that's why the church takes over as much land as they can, so that everybody has to conform and comply to their standards and values. That's why they want Zion restored, the kingdom, so they can enforce their standards and values and be exempt from the laws of America. If America doesn't fall, they'll at least take over Utah again. But number 3 says if it's artistic, you got to back off. It's artistic automatically. It nullifies number 1. You hear that, YouTube? It nullifies number 1. Your standards and values are a violation of the judgment by the Supreme Court. It is the ruling for obscenity. So, how does it harm? It doesn't. But when you have a church that refuses to teach proper sex education, the church says sex is evil. You can only have sex to have babies. The church used to teach that. They've backed off and allowed couples to decide how many kids to have and what kinds of sex to have in their relationship. Except they're creeping back in again through BYU and psychology. They're again telling you what to think is good and righteous. And when you have an indoctrinated culture, they automatically believe whatever they're told. And so if you've got women who believe that they need to shame their bodies, and they need to shame other women's bodies who are not wearing their magic underwear. Oh no, too much flesh is showing. You're evil. You're a whore. You're body shaming. Slut shaming is also a term that's used for this. What does that do to the women who didn't understand that they were in violation of the church's standards and values according to the interpretation of a Mormon or a group of Mormons? Mean girls. Yeah, they commit suicide. This is how the church is responsible for the suicide and the depression of Mormon girls and women. This is why Utah has the highest per capita use, and women are the majority of it, who take depression medication. And depression? Who's involved in that? Oh, right, psychologists. And the church is involved with psychologists through family services. They are responsible for causing the depression in Mormons with their false teachings on sex. And here they are, reinforcing it with idolatry to put fear in you, to fear pornography. And what is pornography? Is it women in bathing suits? Is it women in their underwear modeling for a clothing outlet? Or does it have to be nudity? Or does it have to be sex? But isn't it sex ed? It's teaching us how to have sex. We don't need a doctor to introduce it to us and tell us that we must use condoms to practice safe sex. Because safe sex just means how to not have pregnancy and get AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases, which is good. You don't want that. But that's for people who sleep around. And it's perfectly legal in the United States of America, as long as you don't marry all of them. You can only be married to one person. But if you want to sleep with somebody on a regular nightly basis, or if you want to sleep with different people every single night, they allow it. You just can't marry them. Now you've violated the law. But again, that's an issue where you have to understand sex education, because that's what harms relationships, is not teaching proper sex ed. It's abstinence only here in Utah. Why? Because the church says abstinence only for having babies. And so they don't want you to learn how to have sex. They don't want women to have orgasms. Because it's evil, satanic. You're a whore if you have an orgasm. You're supposed to lie there and take it like a woman. And then get pregnant and be barefoot in the kitchen, cooking for her man when he comes home. This is the church's position. This is how they used to teach. And people were upset with the prophets for saying this. And thus the church had to back off. But they're coming back again with pornography. They're trying to wear you down like a psychologist does, like a bully does, until you accept it as truth. And then you self-fulfill it. They create the self-fulfilling prophecy and force you to self-fulfill it. It has no power. And when you understand the sexual natures of men and women, you realize it has no power. If you watch a movie or a TV show where a couple has sex and then the guy gets up and leaves, has a smoke, or doesn't want to cuddle, he's done. He's no longer interested. Why? Because you don't know what proper sex ed is. But he will want it again. That's what they don't teach you on the Hollywood movies. And is misinformed among Mormon women and among Mormon men. You do not understand. Women have sexual desire once a month. Have you ever paid attention to that? Now, you can want it other times of the month, but you're definitely going to have it once a month. You can't stop it. You can't control it. You can't turn it off. That's your biology. That's the way you were designed from the womb. When the sperm entered the egg, you were doomed. Likewise, men. But instead of once a month, it's every 7 seconds, I understand. And it's a different thing. It's a different feeling, different emotion. And we aren't told this. And so men and women get involved in a relationship. They're clueless about our sexual natures. And then men finds out about a woman's sexual nature, and he's scared to death. And a woman finds out about a man's sexual nature, and she's upset and disgusted. Because you're not being properly taught and educated. And when you have a couple in the church that then all of a sudden get sealed in the temple, their marriage is doomed. Because that's when they realize the sexual natures of the other. And the women shame the men. And the men don't understand why the woman is ashamed. And guilt shame him and sextort him. Not sex text, sextortion. It's where you withhold sex until the man conforms and complies to your will. That's evil. You can't do that. That's not a healthy relationship. But it's the women who have destroyed that relationship when they use that against their husband. It's not pornography. It's the lack of sex ed that ruined the marriage. And so here they're lying to you. New research provides powerful, overwhelming evidence. No. It's manufactured lies to protect the church. Protect the church's position for excommunicating Natasha Helfer. For not only couples, but also for agencies and policymakers. Oh, there it is. Yep. See, the church has already influenced policymakers. Abstinence-only teaching in the school systems. And what is the result of abstinence only? Single underage mothers who then are denied funding by the government. High number of rapes, sexual assaults, and even the making of child pornography that gets posted online. The pictures are not what's evil. The holding the children hostage and exploiting them worldwide to make money off of them, that's what's evil. And the enforcement agencies need to know the difference. And they're not able to go after all of the different pornographic makers because of this. It's overwhelming them on the internet because they're all over the world. And so it's difficult for one nation to go after another nation's violators. But it can be done. China purposely censors their people's internet service from reaching outside of China, so that they can only utilize what is provided for the people by the nation. And so America can do it, but then there's the First Amendment rights and the obscenity laws that the Supreme Court ruled on. And that makes it a little more complicated. And so how regular pornography? Again, no. So I'll let you in on a little secret. Men have no interest in women, sexually interest in women, and thus pornography in whatever art medium it takes. Not until we are ready to release. Then all of a sudden we have an interest. That's the great grand secret nobody wants you to know about. And when you withhold that, when you force a man not to release, and it keeps building up inside of him, yeah, that's where the problems begin. And that's why the medical doctors have said regular pornography use is not addictive. It's actually healthy for the male body, and female too. That's why Natasha Helfer was correct in using medical science, not psychoscience. And so if a marriage relationship can understand this, the wife will not use sextortion on her husband. Because he got married thinking he's going to be taken care of. And then she stops and then condemns him. That's abuse. Your husband has now been a victim of sexual abuse by you when you pull that kind of a stunt. And the church taught you to do that. As higher pornographic use was reported, you said regular use. Now you're changing it to higher use. They're even contradicting their own study. As higher pornography use was reported, lower relationship stability was also reported by men and women. Again, you're not understanding. Once a man releases, he has no interest anymore. He has to wait until it builds up again. And so if he releases, and then his wife says, "Oh, it's been several months, let's have sex." Well, you should have let him know in advance. But you weren't given proper sex ed. Research looked at data from over 3,500 people in committed, faithful Mormon relationships around the United States. Yeah. Examining pornography usage. See, they self-fulfilled the category for them. Indoctrinated them that pornography is bad, and then wanted them to self-fulfill the results. They forged the study. The study is a joke. Perceived addiction and level of religiosity. See? They're in direct conflict with medical science. They are again saying we were right to excommunicate and fire Natasha Helfer. The researchers did not have participants view pornography material because that would be evil, but asked them to answer specific questions that were pre-programmed and leading questions, just like a psychologist does. Do you feel guilty when you drink alcohol? I don't drink alcohol. Where's that answer? It's not an answer. Answer the question. Do you feel guilty when you drink alcohol? Do you feel guilty when you masturbate? But this is what they do. They force you to answer their limited questions, their leading questions, what they want you to tell them to believe in, so they can forge their study and claim that it's scientific. It's all a con. And so, as we see, they rigged the whole thing. Nothing is here as science. It's all psychology based. Because they asked the people. People gave response. They could have lied. But that's why they force only the questions to be answered according to the answers that they want. So that you don't have people coming up with all sorts of different answers that would nullify their study and make it uncertain as to the cause. This is all fraud. And I just exposed it because they reported it. It's true that the type of pornographic content may have larger negative effects on relationship well-being than others. You've already nullified it. Then that men who are religious appear to be more impacted by watching pornography due to feelings of guilt, feelings of being out of harmony with their moral beliefs. Yeah. They just confessed. The church is the cause. But the fact remains, they just confessed the church is responsible for destroying your relationship by falsely teaching you sex ed. And they go, but the fact remains that my relationship stability is weakened. It's weakened because of their belief in their religion. Oh my God. How does anybody give this credibility? Seriously. And so, yeah, that looks like it's it. Most couples are probably aware that their pornography use may be creating risk or harm in their relationship. No. There is a movie. It's the one where a Jewish boy and a Catholic boy grow up as best friends, and the girl that grew up with them but then moved away and then comes back to visit, and she's sleeping with the Jew, and he's looking through his telescope and happens to find that a neighbor clear across on the other tower are having sex. And she finds that he's watching this couple have sex. It's technically pornography according to the church. But he says, this will only benefit you. And he's right. Because he's not having sex with the images he's seeing. She's in his life in a relationship with him. She gets the benefit. And so if you were to understand this in a relationship, you can watch together or use it to help move along. But it doesn't cause sexual desire in men. Sorry, women. You've been fooled into thinking you've got to mutate your body to be more attractive to a man. You've been lied to by psychologists. The whole blonde versus brunette argument back in the 80s didn't make any sense to me. I like redheads. Everybody has their different sexual fetish. And that's what nobody gets. It is not an identity. It is a fetish that when it's time for us to release as a guy, our mind helps us with images in our mind or desires to watch images for that process of release. If we don't have a woman. If we've got a woman, she can help. But she's got to be taught proper sex ed. Both need to be taught proper sex ed. This is the main story here. that they don't want to talk about. There is no risk or harm to your relationship. You know, and a man can still pleasure his wife even after he's done it. He's just not going to be able to release as quickly. So just teach correctly. That's the main lesson. They don't even talk about the harms. They just generally say, oh, it causes harm. Causes harm. Church is to blame, but it causes harm. And then they have related stories. Pornography, a growing scourge. 10 ways to immunize your kids against pornography. The ancient Egyptians had sexual body parts as part of their communication. They taught children from an early age about their bodies and about their sexual natures. And that was the way they communicated. Cuneiform. It's just pure pornography. Because it's vaginas and penises combined together for the language to communicate. How recent research out of BYU shows its scholarship is both wide and deep. Yeah, in a hole. In hell. Protection from pornography. Licensed therapist of 5 action points. Offers 5 action points. See, licensed therapist who conformed and complied to the church, not Natasha Helfer. Offers 5 action points for parents and hope for healing. Healing? Sexual healing. That's the theme song in the description below. They're not getting it. Using critical conversation to empower and protect children online with White Ribbon Week. Founder Deanna Lamson. Dear God, stay away from her. Keep her away from your kids. Critical conversation to empower and protect children? That's misinformation. That's what they're saying. She misinforms your children. Gets you, the parents, to send your kids to the slaughter of a psychologist. This is pure evil doctrine that the church teaches. Like I said, just teach proper sex ed from medical science. And all your problems are solved and you'll have a happy marriage. But for me, I'm not going to violently beat my wife. I know that's a thing these days. I can't do that. There are too many, I can't. And I don't recommend it, but you do it at your own risk. But make sure you have a safe word. Such as, LDS Church is true.